Hey guys, it's Haley and today's video is going to be my top favorite books I read in 2021. I think I ended up reading about like 43 books total, so I'll probably also do all the books I read in 2021. But I wanted to do my favorite books of 2021. I have about 8 here. And I really started getting into reading about halfway through the year, so I think that hopefully next year I get into a higher number count than 43. I think it was about July when I started like reading pretty seriously. We're just gonna get into some of these books that I'm considering my favorites of the year. So we're gonna start with like kind of my 5-star ones of the year versus the ones that are ending up in my like all-time favorite category, if that makes sense. Say hello to Stink. Hello, Stink. Hello. Anyway, so this book that I'm going to start with is probably my least favorite of all of my favorites, if that makes sense. It's because I have mixed feelings about it. But it was a book that I read, and then after I read it, I could not stop thinking about it. Like, I originally think I rated it like a 3, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Now, this book is basically about this woman who takes explicit photographs of men. She'll like find these average looking men on the street and convince them for her to photograph them. This book, the reason I have mixed feelings about it is because this lady does a lot of horrible things. Like, she is really messed up. But the underlying notes of this book, let me pull up my Goodreads review because I wrote it more eloquently, but the underlying themes of these books talks a lot about like power dynamics and the way that women are looked at as like less than, and how like women can get away with more because they aren't taken like as seriously. This gives me like Sally Rooney vibes, but like darker. Like, the woman in this is really messed up. But this talks about things like gender roles, beauty standards, sexuality. The biggest thing is it talks about like consent, power dynamics, and patriarchal power. That's kind of what I put. There's this line in this book, this specific line that like was my favorite line of the book, and it said, "Do I have to smash a glass over the head of every single man I come in contact with just so I can leave a fucking mark?" It shows the way that women can kind of just get away with things because they're not seen as an actual threat, and men feel like she's inferior to them, and she's not. She's wittier, she's more intelligent, but they just see her as a fetish artist, and they don't think that anything she's doing is non-consensual or threatening. So it's really interesting, and I just have a little bit of mixed feelings about it because the things she was doing was really messed up, but I think it's supposed to go under the overall themes of the patriarchal power and power dynamics in general. So I think that's what the author was getting at, so that's why I ended up rating it higher than I originally did. It was just like, I had to think about it, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it after I finished it. So that's why I ended up having this as one of my favorites. I just have mixed feelings about it. The next one is The House in the Cerulean Sea. This book is just like a warm hug. I loved this book. If you don't know it, you probably do, but it's basically about this caseworker who is basically kind of like CPS for magical youth. It's kind of like a light fantasy book, and he gets this very top secret case he has to go on, and whenever he goes to this case, he finds out that the case is literally the son of Lucifer, and it takes you through the time that he's with them and the orphanage, and the book talks a lot about like otherism, like how the society treats these children who are seen as others, even though like you can see the reality of these children throughout this story, and how they're just trying to live their lives, and they're good, and they're just not inherently bad like the world is making them out to be, and how of course they deserve more than they're given. And it also talks about how like general government structures can continue to further suppress these types of people. And I loved this book. It was so wholesome and heartwarming, and I was tearing up at the end, and it was really good. Now, this is the last book on my like 5 stars versus like my top favorites of like all time. So this one is like a 5-star, but it's If Cats Disappeared from the World. This was a quaint little book, and it's short, really easy to get through, but basically it's about this guy who finds out that he is dying and he only has so long to live. I don't remember how much it was, but the devil comes up to him and offers him, you can get more time to live if you get rid of one thing from the world. However, the devil is the one who chooses, so it could be like chocolate, or it could be like cameras, or it could be planes, or whatever he chooses. So then he has to choose whether or not he wants to spend an extra day of life in order to, well, if he wants to get rid of this thing in the world in order to get an extra day of life. And this was so wholesome. Like, this book was so good, and it talked about loss and grief, and I just really enjoyed it. It was really good. Next, we're getting into like the ones that have come to be like on my top favorite list of all time. I have 2 Colleen Hoover books. Now from here on out, these are kind of like in order of like my favorites of the year. 2 Colleen Hoovers. I love these both for very different reasons. Verity was such a good thriller. Now, I know some people think this book's very predictable. For me, I'm just a person who is always like along for the ride. I don't sit there and try to guess, and I don't sit there and try to, I don't know, I just don't try to guess. I just am along for the ride, and the way Colleen Hoover writes is just so easy to read. I'm reading another book now, and it's just you blow through it. I read this in one evening. But basically it's about this writer who, her name's Lowen. She's struggling, she doesn't have a lot of money, she's not getting a lot of jobs, and she gets approached for this book deal for a famous author named Verity, by Verity's husband. And Verity, the reason she needs someone to finish her book series is because she got into this accident, and she's like alive, but she's not there. Like, she's just in a hospital bed, or she's at her house, but she's just in a bed. She's not, I don't know what the word is, but she's not like there. It's all very eerie because her 2 children, she had twins, both recently died as well in seemingly unrelated accidents. So it all happened around the same time, so it all seems very suspicious. But she takes the book deal, and her husband, Verity's husband, takes Lowen to their home so she can go through Verity's office and find everything she needs for the book. However, whenever she gets there, she finds this manuscript from Verity, and it's very dark, and it's admitting a lot of horrible things, and this book was so good. You just can't stop reading. You just have to know what happens. This also has romance, but this was the first book I read by Colleen, and then after this I was like, I want more of this. Even though she's typically not a thriller author, she's a romance author. So I was like, it took me a long time to read another Colleen Hoover book because I was like, I want like this. This was so good. I loved this. And then I eventually read another Colleen Hoover book, It Ends With Us. This book I loved. I love them both. I wouldn't rate one over the other. I love them both for different reasons. It's like comparing apples to oranges. They're different genres. This book is a lot of people find this book very cringy, which I understand, especially in the very beginning where it's very like, I get it, but you have to see it through, because some of these things that I see people calling cringy are because it's the red flags in the beginning of the book. And I don't want to give too much away, but this book deals with abuse, and I think that's very important. However, upon reading this, I feel like it's a very accurate portrayal of abuse, or at least similar to things that I have gone through. Of course, everybody's story is very different, so if you've also gone through things like that, you may have not related to this at all, but I related to this a lot. And the thing with this book is there's this girl named Lily, and she meets this man named Ryle, and he's so dreamy. He's a neurosurgeon, he has lots of money, he's very handsome, and she starts seeing him. And it's kind of like a dual timeline story, because as they're seeing each other, she also finds that her love interest from whenever she was in high school, they randomly meet at this like restaurant, and you're going back and forth seeing the love story between Atlas and her, from when she was 15, between what happens with her and Ryle now as an adult. And I love this book. And the end, the very end, the last like sentence, the last bit, I was crying. I was crying, and I ended up reading. I'm never an acknowledgements type of person, but I read through the acknowledgements because I just loved this book. And part of this is based on Colleen's own experience through her mother having gone through some of this and her living through that. So I love this book, and if you are scared to read this because you think it's going to be cringy, because some people have said it's kind of cringy, in the beginning, yes it is, and I see where people are coming up with that or why they're saying that, but please see it through, because there's deeper themes that it goes through, and there's reasoning behind some of the things that happen in the beginning of the book. But I mean, it's Colleen Hoover. I mean, it is like a romance, so there are some like basic like weird quotes in the beginning that are like, maybe I'm not a bad person, I just, sometimes good people do bad things. This just touched me. I love this. I really want to get a tattoo of something about this book, because I loved this. Following kind of a similar theme, My Dark Vanessa. This book made me go through it, man. This book is basically about this girl who, when she was in high school, I think she was about 15, sorry, my nose ring, she gets involved with her teacher. I think he's like 40 or something. And it's also dual timeline, so it goes between her relationship with her teacher and then also what happens around 2017 when the Me Too movement's going, and a bunch of women are coming out saying that this teacher also did that to them. The part about this book that I loved that they talked about, because I feel like this isn't talked about a lot in just stories about this happening to people, is she didn't see it as abuse because she wanted it. She wanted that relationship with her teacher, but so she is grappling with her feelings about what happened to her, because even as an adult, she doesn't see it as abuse. She never saw it that way. She saw it as a real relationship, and that, I feel, is very accurate to what happens to a lot of women and why it takes years for them to process what happened to them. And this book, so good. Again, trigger warnings if you are not in a place where you can read something like this, but truly, this book was so insightful. And one of the things that I thought was really awesome and interesting was, apparently the author of this, it took her like years and years and years and years to write, because she spent time with survivors and spent time hearing their stories so she can accurately portray some of this, which I think was amazing. But this book was so good, and I read this book before I started like annotating my books, so I need to reread it because I need to go through here and annotate this, man, because dang, that's the one, man. Now I have 2 more books. Coming in second place is Murakami's Norwegian Wood. Now, I also have mixed feelings about this one because you can tell the thing with Murakami's writing is like the way he describes women, I hate. It's just like the way they just, you know that joke about like male authors describing women's boobs, like that's what this book is like, and I really hate that. But the actual story I adore. Basically, there's this young college student named Toru, and him and this woman Naoko, I believe that's how you say it, I could be wrong, know each other because they had a mutual friend who had a tragic death, and they meet each other down the line. Naoko has, I'd say, mental health issues that she's trying to work through, and Toru, is very, he likes her, you know what I mean? And this book was so good. It goes through his time with her. It feels kind of like a more mature version of Looking for Alaska to me, like a more adult version. I have my criticisms of this book and I understand them. Like also like the way he writes how this man sleeps with literally everyone. Like it's not realistic in that aspect, but the storyline between Toru and Naoko is just my favorite. Like the way it portrays her and her illness, and the way it's very bittersweet. I love that. I love sad books. That's what it is, man. So I understand the criticisms behind this book, and I don't disagree with them, but I love this book. So my favorite book of the year, Normal People by Sally Rooney. Oh my god, I love this book. Some people really dislike this book because they say there's no plot to it. I love this book. If you want a sad book, if you want a bittersweet book, if you want a more adult version of Looking for Alaska, it gives those vibes. And can we talk about how gorgeous this copy of? This is the Favorite Books. It has one of the quotes everyone loves on the back. I'm not a religious person, but I do think sometimes God made you for me. It's got normal people on the inside. Oh my god, stunning. I fell in love with Sally Rooney this year. I believe, yeah, this was the first one I read by her, and then I also read Beautiful World, Where Are You? And then Mr. Salary. The only one I haven't read yet is Conversation with Friends, but I'm a Sally Rooney stan over here. Originally, when I read this book, I think I was thinking it's like a 3-ish star. And then I watched the Hulu adaptation and it just brought it to life. I don't feel like I've ever seen a book to either TV or movie adaptation better than this one. It was amazing. And then I immediately read it. So I read this book twice this year because truly amazing. After I watched the Hulu adaptation and then reread it, I was like, I get it. So if you read the book and you're kind of like about it, please watch the Hulu adaptation because it really brings it to life. Originally, I felt like Connell was very vapid and kind of boring and very selfish, which he is. Marianne deserved better. But the show really like helped bring him to life and show that there's a little bit more to him. He was dealing with mental health as well. But I haven't even explained what this book is about. Basically, it goes between the storyline of Marianne and Connell from high school through college. Whenever they were in high school, Marianne was not popular, and Connell was. And they liked each other, but Connell wanted to keep them very, very secret so people didn't know about them. And Marianne was fine with that, because she wanted to be with him. And then there's things that happen, and then they are out of touch, and then whenever they get back in touch in college, their lives are very different. Marianne's a popular one, and Connell feels very out of place, and their dynamic has changed, but Connell's still the very same, where he wants to be with her but doesn't want people to really know. He's very uncomfortable with a lot of things, and he's learning to deal with that, but also try to show to Marianne that he wants to be with her truly and he does love her. But there's a lot of just communication issues, and they don't know how to express themselves to each other properly, and they do love each other. And it's one of those things where it's either like wrong person, right person, wrong time, or just the miscommunication trope. But this one is very sad, and that's what I love about books like this, where it shows how real life is, how not everything's a happy ending, and people are flawed, and it's not always just gonna be happy-go-lucky. It's not always gonna be just rainbows and butterflies. Like, it shows how real things can be and how people make mistakes. And that's what I just love about this book, is how just real it feels, and I love it. I got a tattoo of it. I'm not gonna show you because the artist did a bad job, but I adored this book. I want to read it again, to be honest. I watched the series I think 2 or 3 times, and I read the book a few times. I read it twice, and then I ordered this nice version of it, and I have 2 others sitting on the shelf. I just love this. I'm a Sally Rooney stan. I'm sorry about these cats, guys. Anyway, those are my favorite books this year. I loved them. I loved them so much. I'll probably end up doing all the books I read video, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of... I didn't do a wrap up for November and December, so I feel like I should do a books I read video. But I don't know if I will. If you want it, maybe I will. But those are my favorite books of 2021. So thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye.